At the third stroke, it will be...
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the July edition of the EUCdigest ThrowDown. It's summer, so there isn't much news. However, we have found some great content for this episode that you do not want to miss. My name is Ingmar Verheij, and for this episode, I'm your host. And today, I'm joined by Eric, Jits, Johan, and Kees. Also, for this episode, we've also opened a Clubhouse voice room where everyone is free to drop in and join us live while we record. And you'll have the opportunity to participate and share your thoughts, ideas, and your opinions. This episode will be available as a podcast on your favorite podcast player, but also on our YouTube channel. This month, the video will be a bit more static because, well, I'm too busy to produce a video this month, so sorry about that. Don't forget to like these videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, before we start with the first topic of today, let us highlight our sponsor, Liquidware.
Liquidware provides adaptive workspace management solutions for all Windows desktops. The company products encompass all facets of management to ensure the ultimate user experience across all workspaces, physical, virtual, DaaS, or in the cloud.
Thank you, Johan, and thank you, Liquidware, for your continued support, which gives us the opportunity to create another season of EUC content. Guys, I'm excited about today's topic. How about we just get right at it?
Everyone was like the plan. Maybe you should mention what the topic is.
Oh, dude, no, just before we dive into the topic, I just want to get back to how great the episode was last month. I wasn't there, but there were a couple of things I want to come back to. So First of all, yes, I do love and use Google Workspaces. I've been using it for, I don't know, nearly 10 years. Small thing, I got a hosting company. I had it for almost 10 years as well. And back then, Google Workspaces or Google Apps for Business was completely free. So you could just launch or use public domains for free on a Google Workspace instance. So all of my customers were running on Google Workspaces back then. And I still use it for most of my domains. Second, yes, Keynote. Keynote is awesome. And that's just because Keynote is probably the best tool in timing your presentations. So if you have a clicker, click from slide to slide, the animations in Keynote are pre-rendered. So instead of the animations in PowerPoint, which in case you're clicking and hopping on to the next animation, PowerPoint is then rendering it. And Keynote does that all just before the animation already. So purely when looking at storytelling, when timing is really, really important in your slides, Keynote is the best tool by far. Yeah. Yes, there's a learning curve. It's a little bit steep, but if you're completely used to Keynote, you never want to go back to PowerPoint anymore.
And you need a Mac device. That's probably
obviously
prerequisite. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Anything else you want to pull out from the episode where you weren't attending because you were at the beach, Johan?
Yeah, I was at the beach. I was really enjoying the beach, but dudes, I really enjoyed it. So both the beach as well as the episodes where I wasn't there.
So that means that we're 5 minutes in and we already learned about Johan's little thing being really steep.
Yes.
Okay, Kees.
Okay, thank you.
And we're recording this on Friday morning without alcohol, without it's early.
So it's pure.
That's what you said, right? But
this is pure nature, us.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the true nature of EUCdigest crew, at least them. How about the?
He's drinking a dirty espresso, right?
Dirty espresso.
It's a double espresso Pike's Place beans by Starbucks. It's really good.
Nice. Oh. Coffee review at the end, Keep it sensible. Guys, the first topic. It seems a bit unconventional at first, but I would say surprisingly relevant. Organizations who are adopting the SASE framework, they are increasingly looking for tooling that help them control and secure the access to sensitive data for employees who are using untrusted devices or are in untrusted locations, which in essence is every device on location because there's zero trust within the SASE framework. Now, a typically used solution is remote browser isolation, or RBI, which creates an abstraction layer between the app and the operating system. We've seen Citrix introduced secure workspace access with an optional browser isolation. VMware introduced secure access that leverages Menlo technology, and the list goes on. But according to Ericom, those solutions have limitations that make the technology unusable for virtual meeting software such as Zoom, Amazon Chime, Microsoft Teams, and similar, because it blocks access to users' local device resources like cameras, microphones, local apps like Microsoft PowerPoint. You can share it. And hence, Ericom announced a virtual meeting isolation, an innovative new solution that brings the security benefits of remote browser isolation to virtual meetings where participants attend using their browser without affecting their user experience. Now, this innovation is patent pending technology, making Ericom the only vendor able to deliver virtual meeting capabilities using RBI. Now, I haven't checked if the claim from Ericom is true, but this makes sense, right?
No, yeah, I haven't thought about this. I know this is a topic I sent it in, but was there ever a need?
What's the problem they're solving, right? But
Yeah.
I do understand, right? But it does make a kind of sense. But this is like, well, really trying to solve an issue that's not really a big issue today.
It's going to be an issue because if you look at solutions like Zoom, like Teams, like others, they currently utilize a client, not a web-based, like a web-based application that runs in a browser. It uses a client. Now, a client like that perfectly runs fine in all of these different SASE solutions. But we are currently recording our ThrowDown in Riverside, a web-based tool that probably has challenges when utilizing a SASE framework. And honestly, I'm working for customers, and Teams is a really crappy tool when utilizing your own local Teams instance and wanting to use that same Teams client to connect towards, for instance, in my case, a customer environment as well. So I run the customer session within a browser, and I'm guessing that that's probably where the future is heading. So having a solution like the one that Ericom claims to be SASE compliant and still utilize a browser for all of the hardware extensions, so connecting towards a webcam, towards a mic, I think might be beneficial.
But Johan, please elaborate on the actual problem that the solution would be solving. Like what is the potential outcome of implementing a solution like this? Like
I think it's
curious
purely,
to hear about that.
Again, encrypting or increasing encryption for the application data. But
I know. I don't think there's an encryption thing. I mean, just because it's a SaaS application, or it's supposedly a SaaS application, like virtual meeting software is as well. It's one of the categories of a SaaS application, the Teams and Zoom and the Riverside we're recording in today. That doesn't mean that an organization that provides access to those applications says, okay, so you are maybe from an untrusted device, untrusted location, and therefore I'm going to give you full access to that device. So if you are an enterprise who says, here's a Teams meeting for which you require a browser, runs in the browser perfectly, as does Riverside and Zoom. However, I do want to ensure that, yes, you're allowed to use a webcam, yes, you're allowed to use your microphone. What I do not want is you to upload files, or I do not wish that you share certain applications. So you want to have some granular control, which is why you see a remote browser isolation tooling that basically filters, that abstraction layer between the endpoint, the OS itself, and the SaaS application that you're providing. So there's a security mechanism in the middle which says, sure, you're allowed to use it, but only in these and these conditions. So it makes sense. I mean, the entire market of remote browser isolations and other mechanisms of leveraging that makes perfect sense with SaaS applications, especially when you're seeing the amount of attacks that are happening with the attack vectors that are endless. Sure, makes sense. The only thing I wonder is, I never considered virtual meetings software that had required a specific protection. And in fact, just looking at the solutions that I just named, why aren't they suitable? Why aren't they able to fix this?
That's exactly what I wanted to ask. Like, if I go into a physical meeting, should my company restrict me in using a whiteboard or should they prohibit me from showing a browser screen during my presentation? Like if a customer question pops up and I need to deviate from the standard slide deck, what should I do there? Is there, like if we're in a physical meeting, there's no way to kind of restrict me in using a whiteboard. Why should the company restrict me in using a whiteboard application during a session like that?
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, especially when you're a host, that's fine. But what if you're sharing sensitive data? Or maybe what if you are sharing to, I don't know, a global organization, also sharing into China and Dubai, whatever. You do not always want to allow a participant to maybe go rogue or upload files or like have access to peripherals, which should not be shouldn't be needed in a meeting where you're just joining. So I do understand that you want to have some control over your presentation, right? And over your virtual meeting.
And it's not only that, right? I mean, the amount of applications being used and the amount, I just recently, what was it, like an IDC report, 20 million online collaboration tools are being used today, or sessions are being set up today on a daily basis. So it will only take another, I don't know, maybe weeks or months before these applications, these locally installed client applications of these collaboration tools will be used for malware, any hacking activities or whatsoever. So bringing those applications to a isolated browser setup does make sense. But again, as Ingmar just mentioned at the beginning, and also Johan, you have to make sure that all the peripherals are still working as they are supposed to be, right? So, but that's exactly what I said, right? What is it that we're solving today? And of course, we always need to be prepared for the future. So, and as I said, maybe this is next week or next month or next year. So it does make some sense, definitely.
Okay, let's hold a thought on SaaS applications versus local applications, because I've got a great surprise for you somewhere in the middle or in the end, depending how fast we go. I want to switch gears into a topic that comes from a galaxy far, far away, because Amazon, one of the internet giants, allegedly is about to form a rebel alliance and create an alternative to the Microsoft 365 suite by creating a bundle with best-of-breed vendors like Dropbox, Slack, and Smartsheet. Now, with this Rebel Alliance, they want to challenge Microsoft work productivity application market dominance, and a bundle would help companies, that prefer to buy a variety of business applications. So a company could buy Slack for internal messaging and then Dropbox for cloud storage, instead of purchasing everything from a single vendor like Microsoft. Now, I find it refreshing to see Amazon create an alternative to the Microsoft 365 suite of products. And take on Microsoft and challenge the status quo, because Microsoft, after all, they became the de facto standard when it comes to word processing, spreadsheet, and team messaging, whatever. What I wonder is, what can Amazon bring to the table? I mean, I know Amazon Chime, but what is their stake in this Rebel Alliance?
That's a pretty obvious one, isn't it?
Market share.
Yeah, and scale.
Yeah. And the interesting thing here is that we heard like an exact same alliance being formed a couple of months ago to compete, and that's not what's being said in that statement, but to compete probably against Citrix and VMware from an EUC perspective.
Yep.
But that was kind of announced by companies who proclaim to be market leaders at certain parts of the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, these actually are market leaders.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I mean, this isn't new, except now that Amazon is joining this and is creating, allegedly is creating this Rebel Alliance. I mean, when you went to a conference from Box or Okta or Zoom, Slack, these guys were always on each other's stage, right? So there's an alliance. Maybe they haven't defined it, or at least publicly. But whenever you see Slack, there's a session from Box, there's a session from Okta, PagerDuty, always, like 5 or 6, always together, right? Because these are best-of-breed vendors, and they need each other to have a comprehensive solution. But now, I mean, like I said, Case, it's scale, like scale of economy. Amazon is huge, but product-wise, when you go to an account and say, dear Microsoft customer, you don't need Office 365 because I have, look at the great combinations you can make with the pieces of the puzzle, and this is what Amazon is bringing in. Maybe it's just a marketplace. That could be that they say like, hey, you can transact all these solutions through Amazon, and then single bill, maybe even security, whatever they can bring to the table.
What about data center services? I mean, all of this needs to be hosted somewhere, right? So if AWS is kind of cooperating with Slack, maybe Slack gets a little bit of discount on instances that are sold via this Rebel Alliance. So it doesn't have to be product wise; it can be anything supporting the Rebel Alliance as well, right? I mean, they have cookies, so join the dark side.
and send the boss to the moon and back again.
No, I can imagine that it might also enable developers who currently work in the AWS ecosystem, and there are a crap load of developers working in that ecosystem to build, plugins, additional overlays or frameworks or whatever for all these individual tools to make them even better and collaborate even better. And from that perspective, I guess the ecosystem of Microsoft developers might be as big or even bigger. So from that perspective, I'm guessing that this might have an advantage in such an alliance as well.
Yeah, there's something to keep an eye on. And also, another article passing by, if they didn't include in the show notes, but apparently Google and Microsoft had like a pact where they were playing nice, and like for legal reasons, they basically solved this like at their own table first before going into court. That supposedly that was a 5-year contract that was about to end, and therefore there are a lot of speculations on Google who's going to stop playing nice to Microsoft, vice versa.
The gloves are off.
Exactly, gloves are off. So, and now it's Amazon coming with a Rebel Alliance. This will be fun. This from the side, this will be fun to watch. Talking about the internet giant from Redmond, the big news of this year's Microsoft Inspire is the launch of Windows 365 Cloud PC, which Microsoft describes as revolutionary and something that has never been done before. So let's spend a minute or two understanding what Cloud PC is. As the name suggests, it is a service that provides consumers and businesses a Windows 10 PC hosted on Azure. Starting on August 2nd, you will be able to go into the Microsoft website, swipe your credit card, and you get your personal Win 10 system that's available 24/7 at a fixed price, which makes the Cloud PC a true desktop as a service built on top of Azure Virtual Desktop. And unlike AVD, which is more a platform service and it requires the organization to set up and maintain various components of the desktop service, Windows 365 Cloud PC is a turnkey solution. Not much details on the pricing structure yet, except that it's a fixed price. We do know that you will be charged based on the size of the VM, and there will be 2 editions. And the biggest difference between the 2 is that the Enterprise Edition can be integrated into the corporate network. Organizations can use Microsoft Intune or EMS for managing the PCs. And in contrast, the Business Edition only provides you with a standalone PC that can only connect to the internet and cannot be managed through typical VDI or VET client management system. So this is more targeted to small organizations, consumers. Now, I know, Johan, you have an opinion on Cloud PC.
Oh, yes, I have an opinion.
Is with this.
Well, there isn't that much available from an information perspective when talking about, extensibility. So one of the things that I noticed until so far is that solutions like Avis Logix, solutions like additional connection protocols, solutions to manage those Windows 10 desktops aren't part of an ecosystem that can be ran on top of Windows 365. So in my opinion, and again, it's my opinion, Microsoft has the biggest ecosystem of partners around them. And that's basically because most of their products are built with, a certain goal. Let's make a product. Let's make it work at 70%, and the other 30% can be extended to partners, and they make that solution a really good solution. And that's why companies like Citrix, Nutanix, VMware have a existence, because they basically make a solution like that or enhance it and make it really usable. Now, if you take Windows or Azure Virtual Desktop, and take, for instance, profile management into account, in order to make a desktop from the cloud work, extend it towards your local infrastructure, your local desktop platform, run applications on top of it. You need solutions like that to make it actually work and to decrease your administrative overhead. Now, those solutions are not part of Windows or Windows 365, which, in my opinion, makes it just another cheap version of something that's not usable, that has probably bad user experience because of crappy remoting protocol. Makes it worse to manage because you just have Intune to manage those desktops. Now, from my experience, Intune is not the best solution to manage Windows 10, but again, I'm opinionated. I don't know. It makes it all more complex. Let's introduce a new desk platform without all sorts of really cool tools to make it cool. Make it like really cheap, comparable to the other solutions, and I don't know, introduce just another layer of complexity.
So here's a piece that baffles me, right? And Ingmar, I know you have some thoughts on this as well. So if you look at hyperscalers in general, they'll probably run older hardware, right? If you look at CPUs, memory, all of that, it's probably going to be Haswell, Broadwell. If you're lucky, you'll get Skylake from a CPU generation perspective. Right now, we're in Cascade Lake Refresh, and Ice Lake is just around the corner for a lot of companies. With every CPU generation that we move on, like every newer CPU generation, you get higher density, but also higher clock speed, more cores, so overall better performance. That means that if you land a desktop on one of these hyperscalers, it also means that you're running on already outdated hardware, which probably, and this is the thing that baffles me, right? Companies that have a Microsoft first strategy will probably run or are looking at Microsoft-based laptops. They're relatively cheap. Maybe they're running Surface Books and they're running i3, i5, i7 CPUs, which are pretty powerful from a local perspective. So you've got a remote workspace that is running on older hardware. You've got a local workspace that has newer hardware. And with Cloud PC being managed by Intune or EMS, you've got a instance in the cloud that runs on older hardware that you have to manage, and then you have a local instance as well that you probably have to manage just the same way. So that means you're doubling the effort without actually getting a real benefit. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around the use case of
that. To add to that, no one is using Intune to manage virtual desktop platforms on-prem. No one. So when extending your management strategy towards the cloud, you want to use the tools that you are already familiar with and not introduce another tool that you now can just use. And let's call, I find the term Cloud PC better than DAS, because from a DAS perspective, there's value in DAS. There's no value in Cloud PC.
Well, so okay,
maybe to add to that, right? And on the case of being baffled, and in case being baffled, right? So, but what I don't understand is basically no sound bites. No, but
somewhere, yeah.
in two topics before this topic, right? We talked about as a service solutions. So using a browser to consume your client for Teams, maybe, or any other collaboration tool. Why are we talking about? And I know the answer, right? It is a pretty obvious one. Why are we talking about a Windows platform, right? No one wants a Windows platform. You want an app, and of course, the majority of the apps run on a Windows platform, so you need a platform underneath. But it's all about the applications, right? So, I mean, what's the sense of investing into this solution as just a Windows 10 or in the future Windows 11 desktop as a service?
So okay, all valid points, and I think you're right. But I wouldn't downplay it that much today. I think for one, the primary goal today by launching Cloud PC is AWS Workspaces, which is also a turnkey solution. Swipe your card, there you go. That's a use case they can address immediately because so far Amazon Workspace has been fairly successful where light and businesses are just going rogue. Here's a credit card. I need a desktop. I need it now. I'm going to use it to deploy something. Management is not something they worry about, because it's just like for developers or SMB customers who simply just install their software by themselves. That's fine. So I think for small to medium business, wherever you're going to size that, they have other requirements than typical organizations we see, and Vela points on management and the tooling that you're used to, that you want to keep using at scale. I don't think Cloud PC is that's going to be used at scale by organizations. However, I did see there's an API available as well, so it's not. There's a requirement on EMS. That requirement is, what I heard, is mostly on, hey, you need an Azure AD because otherwise you cannot assign it. Doesn't mean you can use Azure AD today as a primary IDP, but it's something else. What if you're an MSP? Then just having the hardware, and by the way, guys, I'm not sure on the various Lake processors. I always thought that Microsoft was just switching hardware refreshing it very quickly, but I have no clue. So don't.
You can get your M60s from NVIDIA over there, but also newer GPUs.
But okay, so if you're an MSP,
so just to add to that, Imor, there was a session from a guy that goes by the Twitter handle ZenAdBlog, together. I think it was with Login VSI, where they showed a VSI run on Windows Virtual Desktop. They rebooted, and all of a sudden their desktops got a different CPU.
Yep.
So they ran different Login VSI, and between them, they rebooted the VMs. It's kind of painful for your end user if they switch back from a newer CPU to an older CPU generation.
Yeah.
Just as an
I'm
indication.
guessing that the SLA for a cloud PC is going to be different from the Azure Virtual Desktop machines.
Well, there's no performance indication
I'm just saying
in the
there's
SLA.
use case. And for some, that specific, like whatever generation CPUs in there isn't that relevant. For some it is, and it makes sense. I would say for cloud PC consumers, depending on the type of consumer that you are, hey, you've got a Chromebook, hey, you've got an old laptop. How many times did you get a question from your family? I need a new laptop because mine is broken. It's slow. And because you work in IT, you get the question, which I find horrible. I have no clue on laptops. I don't. Stop asking, okay? Guys, if you're listening, stop asking me. I have no clue. But you know what? Here, just get a cheap laptop, get a cloud PC, and you're done, right? Your use case.
Okay, but now you're not gonna fix a PC, but you do have to fix a Azure AD cloud instance, because that's mandatory to run a cloud PC.
And
they will ask you about their Wi-Fi signal, right? Because every time when the network is crappy, their experience is crappy.
Yeah, another interesting fact that I saw is that, so what if you have you got a 5G connection, whatever, it's okay-ish. Maybe you got in Texas, apparently, that region, Houston area, just getting like a couple of megabits connection is a lot. There, I mean, I'm used to fibers to the home and super fast. Oh, good. No way in getting that. What if you have 2 megabits, 4 megabits at home? Then you go into your cloud PC. They've got gigabits of internet connections speed, super, super fast. Doesn't matter. So cloud, consumer stuff, fine. MSPs, right? So you are a managed service provider. They can attach their own tooling to this. So using this as a way of scaling up your environment, maybe you just want to sell 10 to 25 users. That's your typical customer. I do think there is a use case. It does have its limitations, right? I mean, it's only Windows 10 single user, not multi-user. Makes sense for the scale, but there's a limitation. Windows 11.
RDP.
Sorry?
RDP.
It's RDP, yeah. So, I mean, that's surely
performance.
Another use case limiter, this is a weird sentence, support for peripherals. There's hardly any support for peripherals, especially when you're not coming from a Windows 10 endpoint. So multi-monitors, USBs, those things are kind of necessary. However, I mean, so again, I do see this as a compete to AWS workspaces. And, AWS is beefing it up as well. Rebel Alliance, we just discussed that. So this is an interesting fight. And we need to see how Microsoft is going to pitch this. If only we had someone who works at Microsoft at some point here in the podcast. Nope, he didn't join the Clubhouse just yet. But I think Stefan Georgiev, and you're probably listening next time, chime in, give us your thoughts.
Tell us the benefits.
Oh, I'd love to reach out to the community and just to our listeners. if you have any idea what the value add of Windows 365 is, please reach out to me personally at VHOJAN on Twitter, or reach out on EUC at EUCdigest, because I'd love to know why my boss, my organization should sell this. We are
just you are invited as a guest in one of the podcast, and for sure we promise you no one is going to roast it or roast you. But Ingmar, on that topic on MSPs, right? Yeah. What I usually see is with MSPs that they have this tailor-made solution for a specific use case or multiple use cases, as where the hyperscalers, these are just the one-size-fits-all suits that you buy at any cheap store around the corner, right? So one size fits all, and this is what you get. No performance. What is it like? Nothing mentioned in regards to performance in the SLA, right? It's all about mobility and not about the engine in the car. So, and with the MSPs, they usually have like this tailor-made solution that really addresses a certain use case.
So these were not for people who would like to drive an Audi, but more like Skoda stuff.
A 5-year-old Hyundai.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't care about the brand. They just care about getting from A to B. Yeah, that's the objective, right?
Get a Dacia.
I don't know these people, but
okay, let's wrap this up. Maybe next episode. We have a Clubhouse voice room. Everyone can drop in and share their thoughts, opinions on AVD, Cloud PC, other topics as well. Rebel Alliance. In August, we'll have another episode, and then we'll have other topics. I want to go on to something new for this podcast. Since we didn't have too many topics, we can try something I wanted to introduce for a while by now. I have a couple of quotes which are centered around a theme on which you guys will then discuss. And I'll join as well. Maybe you agree, maybe not. Maybe we'll just have an entertaining conversation on that quote before we move on to the next one. We also have Clubhouse, so if anyone wants to chime in, feel free. We love everyone's opinion. Yet we're not going to roast you. I'm not sure. That depends on your opinion, but that's fine. For this episode,
the person.
Case is the bouncer, right, for Clubhouse.
He is, yeah. So Case is the moderator of the Clubhouse. So if you hear no one speaking, blame Case. For this episode, I choose the theme applications. Why not? Are you guys ready for the first quote that I wanted to give you? And don't hold back, okay?
Apply what?
Sorry? Did you say
Apply what?
Applications.
What was the topic?
Apps.
Oh, okay.
Apps, applications. Yeah.
So those things that I get in the Apple App Store, you mean?
Yeah. So the first quote is, Windows applications are legacy applications.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Please.
What do you mean with Windows applications?
Yeah. And why are those legacy? Because they're still there.
Yeah, traditional like executables that you need to install and to configure, and
some people keep saying Windows legacy. Should
let's take a step back. What is considered as legacy here?
Yeah,
because if you don't define a category, how can we put things in a category?
Well, we started the terminology of legacy, maybe, and this is just my opinion, right? So once we
started it.
You and I, no, all of us. No, it was. I'm not sure, but I think it was introduced as at the moment that the SaaS applications were introduced. Then all of a sudden, everyone needed to move to SaaS applications. No need to install and configure applications on an operating system. And by that time, people are starting to use the terminology of legacy applications or traditional applications. So maybe that's the difference, right? Either you install a browser, which can host different applications, or you install a application via an executable MSI or whatever.
But that does not define the category of legacy. So legacy to me is something that is outdated and not relevant anymore. But that might just be my interpretation of the phrase legacy. So I'm just looking for kind of your opinions on what legacy should look like or looks like in a category, and then we can define if Windows apps are based in that category, right?
So if you want hypothetically deploy an application that perfectly writes its dependencies in the user context, doesn't require any administrative permissions or elevated permissions, uses modern frameworks like .NET, I don't know, version the newest. Is that being considered as a legacy application or
Vintage, brocante.
So
That could be a decent application, not unlike Teams that doesn't do any of that. But
well, look at Dropbox, for instance, the Dropbox client. So it's one of the biggest shadow IT based applications, just because there's no administrative permissions required to install the application.
and then
The
another
same
thing
for
about that
the.
client, by the way, is that it auto updates, and you cannot disable it. Cannot. It's just there is
That's
no
convenient.
it's a cloud
Yeah.
service. Why would you even bother?
evergreen. Okay, so
Evergreen.
Maybe that's the strategy.
it is, and clever.
Definitely.
I mean, introducing Dropbox Spaces, everyone had it, and then in their earnings call saying like, "Hey, we have had 90% of our adoption of Dropbox Spaces." Yeah, duh, you had auto update.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of companies doing that because I remember some one of the companies that I sometimes work with kind of went on stage and went like, well, we've got this huge number of cloud customers. Turns out that it like 90% was from one service that they run, which was a file sharing application.
Okay, good story.
Yeah.
So that's just marketing spin.
Yeah. So the legacy, the quote on legacy apps, I don't agree. I mean, when is it legacy? Legacy is Win 3.11. You could say that's legacy because it's superseded. It's in the past.
AS400 is quite legacy, I guess.
No, that's
we
still
still say
relevant.
it to customers,
No,
but yeah.
exactly.
definitely relevant at some customers. So
Yeah, no, but so I think this like Windows apps on legacy are just used by people who have something else to offer or would like to downplay it, or mobility guys like Windows is legacy, VDI is legacy. It's never a success. It depends. There's a use case. So it's just a quote. Okay, another quote which is almost touched upon by Jits. SaaS applications are the future and will replace all Windows applications.
Well, we're already in the future, and we're still having discussions around legacy applications. So I don't see any of that coming.
Let me pull Sean Bass again in.
After nuclear war, we're going to have Windows apps and cockroaches and probably Twinkies as well.
I could
There you go.
Yeah. SaaS apps. Why not?
I mean, Johan, you do a lot of projects at customers, right? So the last project I did for one of my customers 7 years back before I joined Nutanix, we migrated a application that was written in front page 4, which was 1994 or something like that, to a newer platform. As long as we're being put in scenarios like that, Windows applications will have their existence.
So, but then, okay, then consider you're building a new application. Is then SaaS application the future? Do we still need a Windows app?
It depends on your delivery model. If it's an internal application, potentially put it in a SaaS-like structure as being SaaS as a service or via browser, because obviously that's the differentiation as well.
Yeah, and you have
So you can have
limitations. Limitations in HTML.
Well, there are
HTML is
different
not the
modern
only-
languages
yeah.
to build web-based
Exactly.
applications, but it also depends on data gravity. So where does your data exist that needs to talk to the application layer? Is that on-prem? Is that on the edge? Or can that be in the cloud? And do you have some regulations that permit you to take that data to the cloud? That's really important there.
So here's a pitfall that we're
let's
stepping
see.
in as well. We define SaaS as web-based. But the problem is that SaaS is software as a service. So that means that you can just
Like Dropbox. We
consume
talked
a
about
service.
Dropbox being a traditional app, which is delivered as a service
It's funny,
as well.
right? Because we're in this space and we breathe and we kind of live this life every single day. And even within our little team, we instantly assume that SaaS is browser based. I think like that just struck me. I was looking at Ingmar and
And the
it
other
just struck
thing
me.
is, just because it's a web app doesn't mean it's a SaaS application. Okay, so
No, exactly.
it should be disconnect from SaaS and web applications running in the browser. I've seen so many web applications which has nothing to do with SaaS, because if you still need to do work in the back end, then it's not as a service, right? It's more a delivery model. To me, SaaS is, you just have a different contract with the supplier where they do the work for you, they do the maintenance, they do whatever is required to get you that service. And the deployment model or the delivery model, it can be a browser, but why not a Windows app? So it could very well be a modern Windows app, mobile app that gets.
I'm working currently with a customer who uses a VR device to run an application as a service. So there you have it. The form factor of an endpoint is changing. So the delivery model or the delivery methodology needs to change, while the model still remains the same, right? It's still as a service. You still offer it as a service. The company that offers it does all maintenance and stuff for you, updates, upgrades, and you just have to focus on maintaining the endpoint.
Yep. And I do think that's the future, right? Getting more SaaS delivery models, maybe also with subscriptions and like pay-per-use. Even though it is running at the edge, right? Same goes with your VR glasses. The app runs at the edge. Maybe even a data processing happens at the edge. You don't have to send sensitive data if you don't want to, depending on how you use those delivery models. And there's just central governance, or maybe it's just central. There's something centrally happening as a service. But I mean, back to the topic of Windows apps or legacy apps. No, why? It's a different delivery model, and it can still be a SaaS application and super modern. Maybe not. So
maybe we should talk to like ISVs like Autodesk, for example, or Dassault Systems. I mean, if you go back to the original statement that you made, maybe you can refresh my memory, but this was more about Windows applications are considered to be legacy applications, right?
Right. It's around the theme of applications. I'm just saying something which some people keep saying, and then you discussed. I didn't say I agree with it. Here's another one.
No. That's not what I meant. But there is for sure a huge load of applications. Like I mentioned from Autodesk, these applications. These will be most probably Windows-based installed applications with some sort of a SaaS model, or at least from a license perspective. But for sure, these applications won't be delivered through a browser. But again, that's completely different.
That's what we thought with Office 365 as well, right? At least to me, my first impression of Office 365 was like, why would I run Word or Excel in a browser? That's horrible. And now I have Office 365 apps natively installed. But it's a Office 365 version, so it's a SaaS service, local delivery. And actually, watching a PowerPoint in a browser is not that bad. Creating it is something else, but watching it from someone else or co-authoring a Word document sometimes actually works. So, next one.
With subtitles live, right?
Even subtitles, yeah. Mobile applications are simplified versions of the actual application.
No, they're no. They're changed for the form factor, so you could work on a mobile device.
Simplified.
No,
usually
I don't think so. That's like what
there are less features, right?
No, I don't think so. If you, for instance, you take your banking internet services on your mobile device. There was a huge difference between the one you could use online in your browser and the one you could use on your phone. The ones in your browser has changed more to the one you use in your phone. They're not simplified. You could pretty much do the same thing. They're only changed the way they look so you could use them more in a mobile form factor.
Well, to that topic of the banking apps, just this morning I needed to increase my like the amount of money that I can do in a single transfer because I got a big delivery. Sorry. I see case already.
Talk about big delivery.
No. I just did a big delivery as well.
Yeah. Did you flush or did you have to brush?
Oh, guys.
Okay.
I think he flushed
No.
twice.
But yeah, and then he took the brush. No, but that's a nice application, by the way, for some object detection, right? To flush or brush. Put some object detection in a public. Yeah, because otherwise you need to send in. Well, the people that clean the restrooms each and every time. Okay, sorry, back to the topic. No, but certain
Too deep in this topic.
Yeah, certain like increasing the amount that you can transact with your card. I need to do this online. I cannot do this in the app. And I think there are multiple examples.
Dude, what
I mean,
bank do you
if you
have?
look at expensive, sorry, what the orange
What
one?
bank do you have? Dude, I can do all of that stuff with my mobile app. Everything.
I can only do it for the mobile app to increase that amount. If I want to increase the amount for the physical card, which I do not use anymore, then I need to do this online. So, but the same applies if I look at, for example, the way we expense our expenses at NVIDIA. The features that I have online with this application, it's much more extensive than what I have on my mobile phone. But in essence, on the mobile phone, it's just the things that I need there for that process to do it simple, quickly, intuitive, and that's it. So it is, to me, a simplified version of the web version that I have online.
I mean, it's for some application that might be true. Maybe with your banking app, you can do everything as on the web-ish. But look at like Word, Excel, whatever.
I make it simpler. Mail. Just take mail.
Yeah.
I don't want to type a mail with 1,000 words on my phone. Never, ever. But also, if you look at something like a signature in an email, that really sucks on a phone. While the full-fat client or even the web client does that a lot better. Same with out-of-office stuff and all sorts of features. So
maybe I do agree on that side, because I can't remember who it was, but it was like snacking, dining, eating out. That kind of a difference it is.
As a pits.
Snack, lunch, dine. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I still remember that Eric and you had a podcast prior to EUCdigest in Dutch, and I still remember that episode you had with I don't know who it was exactly, but he was about the iPad only workday. So he never the first claim he did was I just do everything on my iPad, but then all of a sudden he did everything on his iPad, but he used a virtual desktop client from his iPad to connect towards a virtual desktop because he needed to do other stuff as well that wasn't suitable on the iPad. So
can I have a Bluetooth mouse with that, maybe from some vendor?
He ordered it to do that, to do exactly that same thing. So that the iPad only work lifestyle.
So my thought is that yes, there are some applications which are just pure mobile, like Clubhouse, right? Doesn't make sense to have a desktop version. Maybe it does, but it's pure mobile. But for the majority of applications, it's not the mobile app is just an extension of your other application, like with Outlook. So why would I need all those features? Or Word, Excel, PowerPoint? I'm never going to create a full-fledged PowerPoint on my mobile device. So it's a dumbed-down version, which is good. Yeah.
Why are we having this discussion? Because isn't it great? No, isn't it great if we have applications that adapt to the form factor that we use? So if we're on a mobile device, the app should kind of adapt to the interface options that you have on a mobile device versus going through a full-fledged browser or a full-fledged app versus a remote client. I mean, I think that's kind of our nirvana, is having an adaptable workspace that is context-aware, right? That's what we all been looking for. That's kind of the visioning of Workspace ONE and Citrix's workspace with intelligence, is that the application landscape adapts to where that person is and kind of the device that person is using. I mean, we just talked about Ericom adapting the application as a zero trust setup. So all of that kind of, for me, it kind of reverts back to the topic of contextual awareness in the workspace. And that should also kind of bridge the gap between your question, because is it really relevant if an application is dumbed down? Because if I'm using it on a mobile form factor, maybe it's dumbed down because I don't have all the options. Like my screen is not big enough to display all the options in a suitable fashion. Right, there's more questions than I can answer on that screen. So overall, I just think that it makes sense to adapt the application to whatever device and context that you're consuming the application or the service.
There's why there are like people who are like super deep into user experience, specifically for mobile, right? I mean, you're deploying it with one hand, or you're controlling it with one hand. Maybe you have Face ID and things, but you can only do so much. You only spend time on a mobile device for so much time, and you don't want to, like, to snack, a lunch, and dine. Yes, it's a dumbed down version typically, because I don't have to do all that much. I don't want to. I don't want to type my password. Dumb it down so it's secure, but probably my Face ID is good enough. Okay, next topic, and then maybe the last. No, another one. We have solved the problem of application compatibility.
Wait, what?
And who is we in this context?
No context.
We
as
Johan
and Ingmar, right?
No, we haven't solved anything.
It's still there.
We basically use a MacGyver methodology to transfer those application, or to add those to reduce application conflicts. But we still have them. We just
And there will always be there, because ISVs will protect their applications, will protect their IP, and will try to lock in customers into their application suite. So.
I love your positive point of view there. It could also be that ISVs just don't know how to write apps decently, and they will only support legacy platforms too. And I say legacy with all intent.
I'm working with a massive healthcare customer at this moment, and they have like 1,000 applications, which are managed. Those are just the managed applications, and there are a lot of them that still require Windows 7. You cannot solve that without breaking any SLA or any support contract you have with, in this case, Microsoft. And
there are companies, there are. So we've got tools in hands that will allow us to do. Like, we're actually at a phase that we have tools in hands that will allow us to do an actual scan of the application landscape and see the viability of moving them to a new platform. We had one of our
sponsors does that.
Yeah, exactly. We had a guest on our show, Remo 3. They can do that. The former artist known as AppDNA was able to do such a thing. And obviously, AWS did a very smart acquisition with buying CloudHouse, which has a couple of informed and well-known people on board that are very particularly experienced in application migration and application compatibility. So we do have solutions on the market that will help us, guide us through the minefield of application compatibility.
So one market
we solve it? No.
That we haven't discussed here is, okay, these are existing applications, and yes, there are compatibility issues, and like whatever going to define legacy, there are legacy apps that require Windows 7, maybe even Windows XP. We still have those applications. If I have to build a new application today or tomorrow, I'm not going to Visual Studio to build an app. I'm going to a solution like a Mendix or an OutSystems, because these guys, for one, it's low-code app development, so it's more modular. There's a better connection between someone who's actually doing the coding and engineering of it to the process that I want to build. Because typically a developer,
it will all depend, Ingmar. If you have an existing application that you need to migrate to something that's more modern, but your business processes will tolerate you to do that, then it makes sense to go to an OutSystems or a Mendix. But if you have applications that exceed the extensibility of such a platform and require you to actually build that application from scratch, or use frameworks or use extensibility options that a Mendix or an OutSystems don't support, then you have an issue. And that's probably not the majority of companies who are willing to migrate towards or want to build or rebuild an application. Our own HR system that we are using is based on Mendix, and it works really well. But it's just because the application itself is not that complex. Okay.
So I'm just saying that if you have to build an application today for your organization, or just as I'm building a new banking app, those platforms make it easier to connect those who understand the business process and actually like tailoring it into a solution like, hey, these are the steps, these are the screens I want to see. This is the way I want to interact with my user. You still need some developers at some point. And a second advantage of them is typically it's delivered as a SaaS model, right? There's a cloud-based engine, and they can deploy for various platforms. Like, hey, I want to have a quote unquote legacy Windows applications. It has to be run on Win32. It has to be deployed as a mobile app. I want to deploy it as a SaaS application. So you have like design first. This is my logic. This is my business process, and these are the delivery models or the delivery mechanisms that I want. Are we solving compatibility with that? Maybe.
But is that only? Yeah. Sorry, is that only compatibility between the application and the operating system, or is it also the compatibility between applications running on this? Those are two different things, right?
And it's not compatible, yeah.
And it depends on the use case. I'm looking at I got my iPad in front of me. I'm looking at the top 50 of applications being consumed. Number one is Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube, Videoland, which is the Dutch video application. Then there's a couple of games. EUCdigest, which is kind of an MFA application for Dutch governmental and healthcare related services. Would I, as a company who requires such an app, run into low code or request low code companies to build such an app?
Check out how many of those solutions are built on such a framework. You'll be surprised how much is built on a Mendix, on an OutSystems, and the likes of those. You'll be surprised. Yes, they do. I was at an OutSystems conference. There was a Spanish bank. Like, why would I go and build on all these various frameworks to build a mobile app? No, I could just use OutSystems. It's great. It's a bank. Even a new credit card solution. It was not Revolut, but one of those others like startup credit cards. That's super sensitive, right? That's super fragile, you would say. But yeah, why not? So anyhow,
It still is a really interesting topic. I'd like to know more about this.
Good. Let's hope if someone from OutSystems is listening, join.
I know one. I know someone.
Good. I only know the sales guy from Utrecht. The primary deliverable of an EUC environment are the apps, not the data. It's all about the apps.
It's the information that's required by the consumer.
It is the data, right? And the application is just the interface that represents the data.
In case you have an opinion.
The primary deliverable of any end user project would be a productive, happy end user. If you're not focusing on the end user, you're doing it wrong.
Like if you want to have happy users, then
yeah, but the only reason why end user computing platforms exist is because the presentation layer that we use to present the data towards the end user is not capable of doing that in a modern way.
That's
a modern and secure way.
That's because you're assuming that when I say end user project, it involves end user computing as well,
or VDI.
Because you label everything as VDI, man.
No, definitely not.
You're a VDI.
No, take a modern EMR application. So if I have a modern EMR application running in my hospital, and I have a mobile app to view patient data. Sure, I can buy that, or I can now go to the App Store and retrieve that application. But am I going to run that application without enhancing my encryption or securing that application with additional multi-factor authentication policies? Again, it's presentation of data in a secure way. And because that presentation layer is not fully capable of coping to modern standards, we need an end-user computing solution. And it can be anything.
But hold on. Just the only thing that Kees has just mentioned, that you need to start with the user first, right? It's all about functionality. 100%. And he talked about an end user project, not an end user computing project. And an end user project, if you talk to a carpenter, he needs a hammer and a saw and nails and whatever, right? So, but if we're, and I think this is the end user computing, the EUCdigest podcast. So the context is all about getting, the end user computing space, the way how we consume data and access securely our applications. That's basically the content, right? And then still you need to start with, okay, what is it that you need? And maybe someone needs a piece of paper and a pencil in order to be productive. Maybe you're an artist or whatever. But it all starts, of course, with the functionality, and then you need to drill down, okay, what kind of technology would you need? And whether that's maybe a laptop, or maybe that's a VDI environment, or a cloud PC, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a little bit distracted by all the messages.
Yeah, Kees tried to rickroll me, but the whole thing turned around, and now he has... what's the actual song called? Like, we're gonna get from
sing it, come on.
It's
Rick Ashley. Yeah. What's the title again?
Well,
I think it's
Gingers Rule the World.
I think it's never gonna give you up. That's the song.
Not rigrolling anyone here. Maybe at the end. It's time to wrap up this episode of the EUCdigest ThrowDown. Again, thank you for sticking with us until the end. We make this show because we like doing it. We have fun to share our opinions, discuss. So we really appreciate that you've listened to us ramble. If you have a topic that you'd like to discuss with us in the next month topic, or just want to stay in touch, reach out to us on the social channels or by email on podcast@EUCdigest. Again, you can join the clubhouse if you want to. For now, I want to thank you for listening, wish you well, and we'll meet again in the next episode of the EUCdigest ThrowDown.